Hey, thanks a lot for the great introduction. So now I'm going to take our session and go in a slightly different direction. So we start off with an excellent introduction to CRM. And I'm going to now tell you a little bit more of a story about a project. So I'm not going to be so descriptive. We're going to talk about the process that I've gone through and that I'm still going through with an organization called LEAF. It was a nonprofit organization that deals with urban forestry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how I helped LEAF move from their initial thinking up to the point to where we're able to, just give me 1 second. I just can't see my slides so well. We're able to figure out how we needed to design a CRM, how we need to re-engineer the website to be ready for that CRM to integrate with it, and then to select a CRM product. And I'm going to share the process and some of our research that we did along the way. So this is what we're going to do. We'll talk about the initial thinking. Happened at the Bedford Academy over a beer. And then meeting the key people in the process, project planning. Then that kind of branches in two directions. So we had a CRM project and a website project that both happened in parallel. And then very quickly, we'll touch upon implementation. And if anyone has any questions or so, just jump right in when the slide's up, so we can hit the issue. So initial thinking. So first about LEAF, they're a nonprofit organization in Toronto, and they promote urban forestry. So they try and get people to plant native species that were originally native to Ontario in this area, and so they plant trees and shrubs, and they'll bring arborists to your house or whatever place you're looking at to give you a consultation and help you green your area. And they have all sorts of constituents they're dealing with. They're dealing with all sorts of government, forestry agencies. They have the largest constituencies. They sell trees. They generate a little bit of profit, so they're almost like a social enterprise in some way, but not enough to stay afloat, so they're technically non-profit still. They do training. You could go on tours if you want to hear experts talk about the trees of the city. They're the people to go to. But when I met Janet, we were having a beer at the Bedford Academy, and she was telling me about some of the problems she was dealing with. She had all these databases that developed over the years. They're all separate. And maybe I have some guilt and complicity, is over 10 years ago I had my first job with you, and I was designing their databases. And then I came back 10 years later, I was like, what happened? It was so clean when I started. But the organization has been very successful, so they kept getting more staff, and you know how it is with nonprofit. 1 year you're doing well and you have a lot of staff, and then another year you don't have many. So different staff, they're at the point where Janet McKay, the executive director, couldn't be involved in the details of everyone's work. Like the organization just got too big. Well, that meant different people were developing different processes and a different system for every process. And you can imagine what happened. Also, trends have changed in the website, so they needed a new branding and redesign, but also they weren't taking advantage of full automation. They had all these semi-automated processes, and they knew that there was a lot of potential to increase their efficiency by tackling these two issues. So we met the key people, and technology projects don't start with widgets and tools and databases. They start with humans, the most important part. So on one side, we met with the executive director. We met with, not the full executive board, but LEAF is lucky because two of their members have a very strong IT background. So we had a couple of people with senior background in IT were acting in the interest of the organization. I felt it was very important to deal with all the technical contractors, because when you come into an IT project in an organization that's been going for years, it doesn't matter how good you are. You cannot figure out what has happened in the past. And it's sort of like, you think you're in control, you turn something here and something else is falling off there. You can never get all the interdependencies. So it's always good to bring in other contractors who are involved. We brought in all the key staff. If you're within a larger organization and you're disconnected from the people in the trenches in the front line, you're not dealing with them, you're in trouble. I don't think you can do a good IT project. But key stakeholders, and we tried to get partner constituents' perspectives. And we developed a project board, so these were the champions in diversity people to represent me. So next thing we did is we started a plan. And, oh yeah.
Was it amongst that group that you appointed a project manager? Like, who owned this sucker?
There were a couple people internally, so there were a couple naturalists. So the executive director was obviously the key person. And then we had one of the marketing persons. He was very, very keen, so he was a natural champion.
So who owned it?
Well, I was paid, so I was responsible at the end of the day. The executive director, she certainly owned it. Internally, ownership, I mean, people were clinging on to different parts of it. So there wasn't, apart from the executive director, a big owners. I wish there was, actually, my job would have been easier.
So were you project manager then? Forget the owner?
Yeah, I would take care of it, but you need a strong counterpart. Okay. Okay, so this is a very simple process. So we started off with the need. And we did a preliminary analysis, so that meant looking at their IT systems, all the processes that they were using, and mapping out all the individuals that were involved, like internal staff, partners, and their constituents. Then we went down 2 tracks. So in one, we were dealing with the CRM and the website. But they're interdependent because we wanted the website to be aligned with the CRM. And I don't know how we would have done it if it was done in 2 separate projects. Then there's an integration. We're still not quite there, but the website's sitting. Yeah.
Does align, I'm just trying to cut through single words. Does align mean that they can talk to each other and?
Yeah.
What does align mean?
Yeah, it's more like the flow of steps we went through and then of information. So in between the CRM and the website project, we're constantly sort of going back. So we re-engineered their taxonomy to align with the processes of the CRM. And I'll show you the details on that, because that's one of the keys. Because sometimes system integration is it's not so much about how the systems communicate, but the concepts that you use to design them. And sometimes it's really simple, so you just have to have basic concepts. Take the same thing and make it so then integration is next, and staff support, probably the top thing. We heard some horror stories about people who implemented CRMs, did not focus on the people, did not get proper training, and then you have systems that no one is comfortable using. For the needs, so we set up the project board, so we had a good number of stakeholders. Yeah.
Sorry to bother you again. So if staff support is so key, it's at the bottom. Did you include any staff up front with the needs?
Yeah, so we started off with maybe it's not up there, but we had the project board right up front, and in the needs, that was like a big process where we included all the stakeholders.
Including staff?
Yeah, staff, and then I'll go through some of the steps we went, like when we get down to the CRM and the website, we have more steps, but I'm going into more detail on the CRM, just because that's the topic for today. So we had the project board, and we facilitated a number of meetings where we went through needs and issues, and we made sure everyone's views were represented. And one of the key things that we put together is a little list. I'll go over this in a second, but this is our magic checklist. And with this, we would literally go around and vet systems. And it's basically a list of everything people wanted. And at the beginning, it's a bit more open. People can say what they like, but in reality, you can't implement everything. So you have to start being a little critical at a later point, but it's fine to include people, and most people will come up with pretty sound needs, and that's a bit of a negotiating process. So just to plagiarize a concept from Dane, we met the other day, and Jim, you mentioned people, process, technology, and I thought that was the best way of describing what you go through in these 3 simple categories. So. Say good artists borrow and great artists steal. So
we stole from Ocasio, and I think Ocasio stole from someone else. But just to put it out there, we plagiarized.
So And I'm going to go through these next, so you're going to see some fun visuals. But we start off with the people, the staff, the partners, the constituents. We went through their technology, so their infrastructure, their website. And we went through every database they have, and we modeled it out. And then the processes. Just the point is that process in an organization must support the mandate. It must be there to support the strategy of the organization. And then the processes we had to look at. So we started, this was like the best project I've ever done. I'm coming in with my big credentials, and I told people, you know what we're going to do? We're going to draw pictures. And I sat down with staff, and we would literally draw things. But it would be like stake people, and the system connects to that. And so, it was a very fun process. But okay, here we are, and I'm going to show you a couple examples of that. What I'd like to. So, this is just sort of a quick summary of some of the main steps we did. So one was we started working on our checklist. We said, who are all the users of this system? And we started mapping that out and trying to understand that. Then we mapped all the different possible processes, and I tell you that it was crazy. It was like drawing like spaghetti soup. You can't imagine the complexity of all the people involved and all the transactions when we started drawing it out on paper. And then I had to get more and more paper, and then going into iterations. It was beyond control at some point, and then you can understand why a lot of IT projects fail when they don't map these relationships, because they never get to the heart of what they're doing. And this, yeah.
Did you do a process redesign then to simplify that? So
Yeah.
So instead of building a system around nettiness, you sorted out the nettiness first?
Yeah. So that was the exact plan, to figure out what their organization was really about in terms of their processes. And it was actually, I underestimated the time involved. I shot myself in the foot as a consultant on that. But it was well worth it, because once you have that, you have your basic concepts to design everything. And then we started doing product shortlists. So people were just putting forward ideas, like people's on the board. Things were coming from word of mouth. Then we also ran a survey of environmental NGOs. So 11 environmental NGOs told us about their experiences with CRM products and what they were using. We made a short list, and then we had our vetting criteria, and we went to visit to system. Yeah.
Did you publish or make available at all the results of that survey?
I didn't. And the reason is that there is some confidential information. If an organization spends a huge amount of money on a CRM project and it's not adopted by the staff, it's potentially considered a big mistake. This might look bad for that organization.
You could change the names to protect the innocent.
Yeah. Yeah, we could probably do that. Well, I have to do some fudging, but I have some basic results anyways that I can share. So I have to be a little sensitive with some of this information. It was quick and dirty research. It was just to get general impressions. I'll just start by talking about our checklist. So we had about 70 needs plus financial considerations as well. And we went through them, so we had functional criteria, so this is what the system must do. Technical criteria, so this was like infrastructure considerations. We wanted to know things about the solution provider. Are they going to be out of business in a year? Or are they probably going to be around for a while? And, then here's the financial, and there are a few others, but these are the main headings. Now, these are just sort of subheadings. So for functional criteria, we have individual and organizational management, but then there's like about 8 sub-issues. So this is a great thing to have, but it's you can only evaluate so many systems like this, but we're going to a very fine grain. At the same time, you'll never get through the process if you have a list like this. It's too much, it's overwhelming. So we classified everything, whether each of these were going to be implemented immediately, so we prioritized, or there were things that could wait. And then we said things are must-have, should-have, and could-have. So must-have or mission-critical, should-have, yeah, it would be helpful. And could-have, okay, we're not going to bother if there's an issue. And that's a tough process you have to go through with people. And we had different members score it, and then we went through to build consensus on that. Okay, so we started by modeling some of the staff, and after a long process, that's why I'm protecting the names, or hiding the names from protecting. So we had to figure out what the staff relationships were. People describe staff in different ways, and sometimes even the organogram itself is not enough to help if there is an organogram to begin with. So this is important because you're going to design the system around staff, and specific staff are having specific interactions with the systems. So you have to figure out what those roles are. Then the same thing goes with the partners, or different ways of describing these partners. Now we have a nice hierarchical taxonomy, or something we can simplify when it comes to the actual process. And then for the constituents, these are more the public facing. So here you have a big cluster, which is more the operational arm of the organization. So this is where a lot of the sort of daily interaction with the public happens, and there's several subcategories.
I've said a couple of those things. It's really taken me.
Yeah, so well, here we have like sort of journalists and I think government. So I forget how we classify it. It could be like technical or political division. Then we have there's different events. So there's different type of event participation a person could be classified as. So this just shows you sort of some of the complexity of trying that. And this was the cleaned up list. This was the, let's take it down to the results. Now, this is a cleaned up process for volunteer engagement through their systems. And we're using something called a case diagram in a language called UML, which is used for modeling software. And this is the simplest and easiest to understand. I know this came out of the spaghetti diagrams, so this was sort of cleaned up. And so this is a pretty simple thing where we have a few transactions that are happening on web and between their database. But this is a cleaned up process. The original included going to the web, someone downloading the information, putting it into a database, another person extracting it out and using it. Then if someone wants to send a newsletter to them, then it means going in or reaching it, comparing it to the other things to make sure it's not integrated. And it's very scary when you get into the whole thing. So this is cleaned up. This is their public relations process. So here we have our marketing coordinator, Matthew, doing all the work. And the marketing manager sort of overseeing the process. Okay, now this is the heart of the organization, and I put this one up because this is now the cleaned up process, but it's so complex. And they have a very specific access database. So this is for leaves tree planting process, and it's an excellent process. They provide great service, and this is absolutely tailored. This is not a data model. These are more of the different types of processes. So they have different types of clients across 3 different programs there. So there's 3 different ways you can order a tree through Leaf. This is their admin. They have some companies involved. There's arborists who are in the field that have to access the data in different ways. So this is just one way of trying to bring it into a framework to understand. Now, with this, we felt that this was not going into any CRM. This was too complex. And in fact, there's researchers who use this data for research, so it's even more complex. Did you?
Yeah, I was wondering if did they understand this process when you started? Did they know that this is what they were doing? Or was it uncovering, like did they sort of have some material that they could bring to the table to help you understand this? Or did you have to help them uncover this as part of the needs assessment and so on?
Yeah, I had to uncover this. The first thing we did is we looked at their databases, which is, I mean, I could have just got this by looking at their databases, but that just wasn't enough. Because the databases were getting data from web forms that were used through manual processes and different vetting internally. And then that data was sometimes copied to other systems as well. And every person had their own process, so the database didn't help me. I think if we had gone to a CRM company and said, put this in a new system, they would still be doing the old processes. So I guess it's like when you move, you might as well throw away things or you rethink how you're going to fit into your new house. Oh,
Hi, I have a question. Is the way that you mapped the process here, if that were to change after you've based the CRM on that process, does that complicate things?
Potentially. So we were not planning to implement this at a mission critical time because people will be tripping. There will be a big learning curve. Obviously, a poorly thought through implementation is going to even be horrible stress on people potentially. So yeah, we think there will be a steep learning curve, and they'll probably also want to change things as well once they get going. So this just sort of, I think, helps narrow their focus. So anyways, we left this for the future because it's mission critical. And it works seamlessly. It's just that it is a complex process with many moving pieces. So we went through this process and then we said, oh, actually all we need is constituent management, bulk emailing system, volunteer and donations, tutors, events and training. And I guess we could have said that off the bat, but their systems weren't necessarily organized specifically around that. And just by getting to these very simple processes was very helpful. So we now know how we have to re-engineer all of their other databases around that. And, if they had come to me right at day one and said, this is all we want, it would have been great. If the board on day one said, this is all we need, that would have been great. But that's not what I was told when I started. I was told all sorts of things. And this is what it comes down to in sort of core functionality. So we built a short list. We surveyed these 11 organizations. We compared them against the basic criteria. So we didn't vet all systems by all criteria because we grouped our criteria in categories. We could go for the top level criteria. So if there's a major area from a CRM, I didn't have to go and check whether they had all A. We could just boot them off the evaluation at that point. So, then we had a short list of 2 systems. So it was like Sumac and Salesforce Nonprofit Edition, and then we did a final selection. So this was the initial list, and the order I won't go into them in detail. Just sort of maybe it's throwing a little out of context for this slide. From our survey of the 11 environmental NGOs, these are the core features that they were using. So most of them were using them for donations, and for managing their partners and funders. Bulk emailing was extremely popular, and the user database sort of a little redundant there. Event registration, volunteer management, electronic payments, web analysis. So reporting was considered very important. Then reporting for donors and grant management. These were the overall impressions that we got, and the number of people responded. So Sumac got glowing positive support. Salesforce, only one person in this talked about Salesforce Nonprofit Edition, although we spoke with many others during the process who used it. And it was just one story, but it was like this rag of riches, like we've seen the light sort of story. I've never read something so positive across all fronts. Razor's Edge was a little mixed. Convio was good. City CRM, it's neutral mixed, but this was a classic case of we implemented it, they didn't give us training, and we didn't know what to do with it. So it sounds like it was just like a bad implementation. And of course, this is not science. This is more like a few impressions, just to help give us some perspective. So we chose between Sumac and Salesforce Nonprofit. We decided on Salesforce with the Quick Start program. So for with all the analysis that we did and modeling, we can now go to a quick start program and then have it implemented for around $10,000. And the advice is don't implement it without knowing what you want, and make sure you tailor it to your needs. If you use Salesforce out of the box, you get like hundreds of knobs and buttons and fields that it won't make any sense. So you have to tailor it.
What was included in the 10 grand?
I think it's basic data modeling, migration, and training, and they tailor the system. So,
Any support?
not sure. I think it's gonna depend. We still have to shop around because that's now the next step. So,
What are you shopping for?
implementing company. So there's a number of companies that do the implementation.
So they're not involved in implementation of their own product?
Well, Salesforce is so big that they have partner organizations who will then take on specific roles.
Okay.
I don't know, do you have a deal with them?
No, we haven't dealt with the partner organizations, but I can refer you to an organization that do deal a lot with Salesforce.
Yeah, that's a bit of concern because you want to go to one person or one company.
Yeah.
Do you get whipsawed between them?
I'm sorry?
Did you get whipsawed between them, or meaning that's not our problem, you go see him? Oh, no, that's not our problem, you go see him?
Oh, yeah, I guess that's always a risk when you have multiple contractors involved.
I find the best way to look at Salesforce is it's kind of like iTunes, where you can go and buy like different apps for like an iPhone.
Yeah.
And so I find that's how the best way to look at Salesforce. So you would buy like an application that would help solve like your donor stewardship, but then you would buy another application that would help with like bulk email sendouts.
Yeah, so there's lots of that. I guess that's also, you're going into a marketplace. That's also a changing, like, one thing I was surprised, Salesforce says, oh yeah, our system absolutely does what you want, and they're sometimes talking about things on the apps market, but remember, there are often companies who put them out and eventually want to charge you for them. So something that's free might not be free later, so be a little careful with the functionality they promise, which is not core.
It sounds like house renovating, I'm worried.
Yeah. Think big. Everything's
I was going to say with Salesforce, there is the customization piece. So even if you do use the free core part of Salesforce, you may want to customize certain fields for you to use. So there is that cost. There is the apps like Jamie has mentioned, that you do have a purchase for those apps, even if you do get the free 10 user licenses. If you want additional apps, some of them have a fee associated with it. In addition, if you want to do the implementation, have someone actually walk you through the process, that's another consultation fee that you need to think about. So all of these things together, it's a total cost for implementing.
For Salesforce, 10 users are free. Are that only for non-profit?
Yes. Yeah, it's actually only for charities.
It's only for charities.
Any other questions? Okay, now we'll just briefly talk about the website and how we got the website ready for the CRM. So they need to rebrand their web design. It was time for a change. Their marketing and engagement online had a lot of potential to improve. They had a system that, like many websites, was designed over the years, and there were many things they couldn't do with it for engaging their constituents better. So they're like bending over backwards to do a lot of marketing activities that could be easily fixed with a new redesign. They needed a taxonomy change, and we need to align this with the CRM so that the same concepts that the business was going to be designed around, or the organization will be designed around, need to be in place in the website so that they could be super integrated. We also want to get more social media integration, make it more a community portal. And there were tons of other little fixes that we were dealing with. So what we did is we gave them a new graphic design based on their new branding concept. So, and this is where the early analysis fits into website design. And quite simply, we took the core activities that their constituents would be doing online, and we designed the taxonomy around them. So, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You probably think I'm a dumbass, but what's taxonomy?
Oh, okay, that's sort of the hierarchy. It's like the navigational menu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so taxonomy is just the relationships of that menu. Yeah. And there's different philosophies for how you design them. Oh, yeah.
An example of taxonomy is like mammal, it's a sort of, basically like the taxonomy of kind of different creatures. You kind of got mammals, you got marsupials, you got, and so.
Well, yeah, I was thinking we were doing Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom here, but yeah, it's not really. Okay, but similar, right?
Yeah.
Phylums.
So, well, actually, they deal with the forest. So you know, they have some sections like designed by trees, but this is about the user. So we designed it around what users do. So from the point of view of a user, they could come here to volunteer. They could come here to attend an event. They could come here to order a tree. They could come to learn about trees. They could come to take training courses. So we changed what was originally an information site into a user action site, a place where you go to do things, and then with all the social media integration, you're able to really make it a much more vibrant community site. But it really came down to those early spaghetti diagrams and how we put it down to just 5 principles, which seem, you know, everything's easy in hindsight. So just quite simply, all the systems are following the same process, using the same taxonomy, and we're looking for automation wherever possible. So this is it for implementation. We haven't quite done everything yet, but we have the website in place, so we're going to be going with the Quick Start program. Everything will be aligned conceptually by the analysis, and we're going to do lots of staff training and supports. And I think you have to anticipate a lot of hand-holding and tripping. So just don't do it at a mission-critical time. It can be stressful. Okay.
How was the website built?
It's in Drupal.
Yeah.
So initially Civi CRM was a contender. It runs in Drupal.
Have you implemented Salesforce yet? You haven't?
No,
You're going to.
That's the next step. But they're doing planting right now, so we have to wait for their planting season to finish.
How long did this process take?
A lot longer than I expected. I started, could have been last November, and then maybe around February we were about the point where we're reaching sort of conclusion on everything.
I'd say that that's about as fast as you could possibly do with something this complex, in my experience.
Yeah, it really took a while, but I mean, just like those few principles which are so common to these systems, just to get there was like a huge amount of work. And once you have that, I mean, most of the other things are easy. I find in most projects I've worked on, the hardest part is dealing with sort of subjective issues and perspectives and people's ideas. And then once you have your blueprints, then it can go very fast. Okay, well, thanks.